Thank you so much, Dr. Farida.
Thank you. The global and engagement, the international engagement unit at the School of Education, the global and international engagement unit, thank everyone for attending this webinar today. And we especially thank Dr. Raymond Sangabao and Paul Natinda for being generous in sharing their wisdom and their excitement in terms of what is happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo and in Tanzania. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce them. Dr. Raymond Sangabao is our Fulbright Scholar here at Indiana University. He is a professor of English language education and teacher educator at the University of Kinshasa. I think the #1 university in the DRC. His field of interest is language policy, literature, and culture. Dr. Raymond is an active member of TESOL, IF-TEFL, and a resource person for the Congolese Association of English Teachers. He chaired that association for 10 years. Paul Natinda is a Fulbright alumni, an FLTA, a language instructor of Kiswahili, and a graduate student at Indiana University Bloomington pursuing a Master's of Arts in African Studies. His areas of research and interests include language education, culture and literacy, language policy and decolonization, educational planning, and comparative education studies. So we have these two distinguished scholars. So Dr. Raymond and Paul, take it away.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Farida Pound, and we are so honored to be in this discussion. So without wasting much more time, we'll just go ahead and start to talk about our topic. So we are going to discuss with Dr. Sangaba about the from the colonization to post-colonization period and the contribution of these local languages for cultural identity and self-determination through music. So because of time, we'll pass you guys through some slides. So and we will go to hear some songs. Dr. Sangabao.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul and Dr. Pawan, all the guys around. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. We start with this language policy, which is an heritage of the colonial period up to the period after colonization. We noticed that nothing has changed. We noticed that in language policies all over Africa and somewhere else, the indigenous languages have been devaluated and reduced as inferior languages in most of our countries. And that can be seen through the punishment that when you go to school, I can remember my memory back. We go to school when you speak Lingala, you speak Swahili, you speak Chiluba, you are punished. One of those punishments, as you can see on our screen, je ne parlerai plus en Lingala. So you write it for 2,000 times, or one notebook of 100 pages that you can spend a week or many days before you finish that punishment. That is to show that we were not allowed school to learn our local languages. Paul, have you experienced that too?
Yeah, plenty of times. I remember when I was still in school, I could go to my teacher's office to ask for something, and then I could face and get hit by these signs, speak English. No English, no service. But when we are studying in class, we use English, but when we are outside, the language that we use is Swahili. So this was kind of very different things. Sometimes they give you something to wear on you. So when you speak your local language, for instance, Swahili or Lingala, and that is kind of like when you wear that thing, it's like shame for not speaking English.
A symbol.
A symbol, yeah.
A symbol of inferiority that you've
yeah.
spoken
Yes.
a language which is not for educated people.
Yeah. And on top of that, it's like these languages, they still persist, and then they really beat the odds, I can say.
Of course, yes. Of course, yes. Whatever those punishments were, reduced, devaluated, but those languages have made their own way, their own development. And in fact, you can see that those language policies have been a failure all over in Africa and elsewhere, because the majority of the population, they speak those local languages. They speak local languages, and through music, religion, sport, you will see those languages. That's why we are concentrating on those music since independence, since that period of the 60s, the year of independence of many countries in Africa. Up to now, the local languages have made a way to be spoken, to be learned, to be used through music, sport, religion, and family events are hosted in local languages. So we have selected 3 songs today for you guys. 2 songs from Democratic Republic of Congo. The first song is The Celebration of Independence, and the second one is a patriotic song, Tukufopona Congo, which shows nationalism and self-determination of the people. And those and the third song is in Swahili from Tanzania, showing the view of the current generation now with globalization, with decolonization, how the young people view their future.
Yeah, that's very true, because throughout the course of time, new generation has come with their own ways of seeing things. So let's start with that song.
Yeah, we play that song for the celebration of independence in Congo since the 1960. How the language which is used there is independence, cha-cha, tozumie, oki kwanza, cha-cha, tubakidi, otableron, cha-cha, baganyeo. Yeah, you can see that we have languages, the celebration of independence in the national languages, because the bench of political leaders are from everywhere in the country. If Paul, you can show us the linguistic zones, the 4 linguistic zones in Congo, you will see that we have that yellow part, which is in the east, which is Swahili. The middle, which is Chiluba. The red one in the west is Kikongo and the Lingala part. And to show that Congo is a nation made of 4 linguistic zones and other local languages, because there are more than 250. But these 4 have emerged as national language. They have the status of national languages that are used in trade.
One of the things that is so fascinating about these local languages landscape is that you can see how languages has united so many people, and you can see how also the language such as Swahili has been used in all this area. That means local languages can play an important role in building national unity, but also I think it can, instead of trying to unite Africa economically, politically, we can start with languages, because if someone can learn Lingala in Mali, let's say, or someone can learn Kiswahili in South Africa, and we can speak our own African languages, I think we have, I believe we have a better future for that. And yeah, so let's see how the language policy and in the same song keep revealing to us. Yeah, so.
Yes, so we have important verbs there in that song. You have the verb tubaki, which is in Kikongo, and we have tozui in Lingala, and baganye, which is a kind of code mixing to show how those people have been engaged to take that independence, not served on a dish, but by persisting, by resisting, by fighting, negotiating on the round table in Belgium.
I think how people use language in these songs during the fight for independence is very amazing. I remember watching so many songs from South Africa and Mozambique and Zimbabwe. They use local languages during the fight for independence, and I think that is something which is quite unique for most of the African languages during the fight for independence. So.
We can go to the second song, which is Tokufa Pona Congo.
And I really love this song.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That song was the celebration of independence. And if you go further, you will see how people are determined not to come back to colonization.
Yeah.
Although the colonization as it's a good facet to bring us civilization, but also it was full of sufferings and full of things that is against humanity. Yes, we can go to the second song, which is selected. I was saying that this song, which is like it's a patriotic song from the Democratic Republic of Congo. If you can compare it to "If You Must Die" from Claude Mackay.
Yeah.
So it's a call which is launched to Congolese people to fight against the enemy in the context of war that has been imposed by some of its neighbor, and the refusal to come back to a second colonization. The song is in Lingala, Chiluba, Kikongo, Mongo, Swahili, and can we play it?
Yeah, definitely. And something which always kept cycling into my mind is I've never heard any songs for fight for independence wrote in English or French.
Yeah, so that's it. Those songs are they are in local languages because they need to awaken the consciousness of the people, of the indigenous people, and they want everyone, all nations, to be joined. You are making a good point, Paul, because nowadays there is a tendency in my country. The national item has been translated in local languages, but these songs are not translated in French, neither in so you see how those languages have been playing a tremendous role.
Let's listen. I think the song is so much concentrated on how the exploitation of African resources.
Of course, Africa is a rich continent, and every country has got some potentiality on the earth, and sometimes those potentialities are the causes of different wars in the continent. Yeah. This is I grew up listening to that songs. I think here there's something interesting. So you can see how they mix different African languages during this independence struggle. They use Kikongo, they put some Lingala and some Swahili. That's to show that a country is a nation of diversity, not only diversity within the country, but also within Africa and within the world. I think that when we talk about the question of diversity, it takes us direct to how these local languages and self-determination through songs has been prevailing. And in that way, I think we can see how now current generation, new generation, they have their own way. So the determination during the fight for independence and how how people in East Africa, in Congo and Tanzania, they have used songs to display how local languages has a very important role to play. So maybe do you think we can go ahead and see how the new generation? Yes, can we finish that song? Yes. And see how to show that integration of the world, how the Cuban rumba has been influenced. Let's see. Yeah. Yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah. And I think something interesting about this side is how you can see how this they say thank you to all these
brother countries like Angola, Zimbabwe, and Namibia during
that's saying that if you see the landscape of those languages, you see that they go beyond the boundaries of
the boundaries of these countries.
Of the countries. You can see those languages in Congo, Brazzaville, in Zimbabwe, in Tanzania, and in Kenya. So it's like kind of bringing people together. Okay, trust boundary to see how people are connected to each other. Now we can go and see how the new generation is trying to bridge that those colonial languages to the period, how every individual, every young people is trying to see the world in its way, without boundary of gender, that boundary of nationality, that boundary of whatever.
I think one of the things which is very which caught up my attention so much is how the presence of these two languages, I mean, African languages and colonial languages, how new generation they have find ways to navigate that. And there's this song that I would like to share with you guys. It's called Mlete Mzungu, which means bring the foreigner. And there's different reason why I choose this song. But before we go to that, I'll just go to highlight some of the key points, especially how at the beginning of this song. So here we see cheza kwa steps, like dance by step, don't step off on your brother. The context of this song is that this song was created for having fun, for dancing, but there's so many layers of the meaning that someone can find behind this song. And when you dance, don't step on your brother, on your fellow, that's this calling for seeing everybody like equal. We don't need to oppress one another. You see, that is something which is really interesting about this particular line. What do you think about
it? That's it. You see, if when you speak of brother, Muzungu is Mundele in
Lingala, yes,
and it's a white man.
Yeah.
So let him come. That's the vision of the new generation, which is seeing how decoloniality, how you can navigate in a nowadays system globalization.
Yes.
And the party don't sleep.
Something interesting about this one is that the singer Isabella, she's from Denmark, and she displayed this cross boundary that even though she's Denmark, she's Muzungu, but she learned Swahili. And then she brought this song, and when this song came out in Tanzania, it was really something because people didn't expect a Muzungu to sing in Swahili. But also the way she sings, like we don't sleep. Yeah, it's a party song, but when you look at these layers of the meanings, like there's this determination about from the current generation and their determination to coexist, and how they go together, and how how they can cross these language barriers, and how Isabella was displayed how she incorporates English and Swahili, and she used very little of English in her song and much of Swahili, and that reflects how the linguistic landscape in most of East African countries is. And so at some point, she also used some code mixing and code switching, which is something which really happens when you hear even young generation speak these days. So we can listen a little more for some.
Yeah, just a comment about that relationship between sport, language, nationalism. You know, when our soccer teams play, sometimes they call for professional players from outside, from Europe, from outside our countries, to come and play to defend the nation. And the language, which is associated to it is the local language, to show that people are really attached to their cultural identity, to their country, and see how not only the elite, but the majority of the population. That's why the Muzungu understood that the song could have meaning, impact only if it is sung in Swahili.
And someone can ask why, we can see the strength of this song is that when someone saw someone like Isabel, they would think, oh, why didn't she write this song in English if she's inviting someone? But she wrote this song in Swahili. That's the strength about this song, to show that language cannot be seen as a barrier. And I think we've been led to believe that one of something that hinder people to come together is the language barrier. But I think this song communicates something different, that language can be a source for people to come together and not as a barrier. So let's go ahead and for these few minutes and finish listening to the song. There are some points she said that people should not run. She says something like, there's no run for us. There's no to run from problems. And I think that is she was trying to communicate how young generation faces so many problems and so many issues. For instance, poverty and all these sort of in different things. But the thing that young generation and how they encounter problems pertaining to language, I think she sent this message that we should not run from the problems. We need to face these problems. And it's like this song is a message for the policymakers to see the current need for the young generation, how we can incorporate the decolonization of language policies to start putting all these languages in policy so that they can help the new generation to extend and transcend all these issues that they are encountering. What do you think about that?
Yes, I remember what Mandela said. He said, if you communicate or you tell the people to tell them in French or English, it goes to their head.
Yes.
But if you tell them in their mother tongue, it goes to their heart. You see?
Yes.
So when I was referring to our soccer team, when we play any cup, those players, they come to play with their art because they are coming back home to defend the national flags of their countries.
Mhm.
So education should address
this
the
issue.
language policy should address that language issue that we got from colonization.
Mhm.
Because we don't educate only the head, but we should educate
The
the
hearts.
hearts
You-
of the Africans, of the people,
Mm.
to go straight solve the problem of their communities. So
Mm.
that's why sometimes the failure of that language policy
Mhm.
is bringing the failure of economics of development, because people are full theories in their mind without bringing what they learn at school in another language. They don't know how to bring it to the ground, to experiment and to solve problems of their communities.
I would like to finish what you have said by saying what Mandela said is like how the Ubuntu philosophy, it is so embedded at the hearts of the people. So during this decolonization of these language policies, we can try to incorporate other African philosophy and the ideas to see how they can be incorporated to make these language policies more relevant and sustainable. Thank you so much for listening, Dr. Farida. Welcome.
Yes, I'm just listening here, and I'm hating to interrupt, but at this point in time, this presentation is opening up so many questions, and I'm getting it from multiple devices, and so and I think the audience is eager to engage with you. Audience members, if you have questions, please post them on the Q&A. And let us know what you're thinking. This is an opportunity to engage with these two scholars and the wonderful things that they have shared with us. Such an eye-opening experience just listening to you. So I think Martha Nikas has several questions. Martha, if you want to come online and say something, or I could read the questions for you. So I'll just go ahead and read the questions. And so one of the second question, there are two questions here that Martha had put forth. The first is that, the second is that don't step on your brother. This underscores how now it is a struggle and determination against erasure. How much of this awareness is brought into either the youth culture or schooling?
All right.
Yeah.
You wanna go? You
Yeah,
go first. Yes.
I can go. It's what I was saying. The failure of language policy, it's what I've just mentioned, that schooling in Africa and other countries elsewhere, the local languages have been marginalized, have been devaluated. The schooling is also a negative impact that many young people are not able to implement what they learn in other languages in their community. So the school is also impacted. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, in the context of schooling, I believe language comes from culture, and languages has been taught across the world from at school, university. And I think when we are going to reimagine our language education policies, and how language are being taught is where we can incorporate these cultures so that the people, the young generation, or people who learn these other languages, for instance, we see here at IU, we teach other African languages, we teach other Asian languages, I mean, European languages. So instead of concentrating on just equipping our students with languages, we can equip them with the cultural values of these languages so that they can have understanding on how other part of the globe they see things, the ways of knowing, so that when we understand each other in terms of our values, I think we will be in a good position to appreciate and coexist together. That's why this song uses this phrase, usimkanyage mwenzio, don't step on your brother. This is the very embedded concept which can be taught in languages. And when you teach language, we use songs, we use different aspects of culture to share these things. I think we have.
Yeah,
we have multiple
stepping on your
questions.
brother, including the culture of your brother.
Yeah, including the culture of your brother.
Okay.
Yes.
So before I go on to the next set of questions, I do want to say that Martha also says, singing revolution, this connects to another struggle for independence from the Soviet Union by Estonia. There is a film called The Singing Revolution. Your presentation underscores this, as songs in the local languages underscore the assertion of identity through song and bringing voices together in unity. So that was her comment.
That's it. Perfect.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Thank you, Martha.
We have another question from Ritushri, and she says, she asked two questions. The first is, do you think music can resist the advancement of neo-colonialism in a post-colonial space such as yours?
Yeah, music can resist. I know quite recently, young singers resisting political decisions. In my country, I have songs like we have a young brother Alesh who gave a wonderful song, Toloba Tolobate. So whatever the neo-colonialist leaders do, they have obstacle of the young people. If they don't agree, they give a song. In my country, in Kinshasa, there are many young leaders who are ready to be arrested, resisting the politics of new colonial leaders.
I remember also in Uganda that this artist called Bobby Wine. He has been
Bobby Wine.
Yes, he's a very prominent artist, and has been composing songs to critique the government, to critique what the international organizations, organization and countries on how they interfere with the affairs in Uganda. And that thing has been like a very, very good example on how songs or music can resist the advancement of colonialism. For instance, this song as well. You see how someone who is out of Africa singing in African language and expressing all these layers of messages. I think, and songs has been used for so many generations back to advance these protest and fight against colonialism. So I think if they work before, they can still work even now. Do you remember that song by Michael Jackson, the Earth song about the climate thing? So if song can even resist the climate issues, talk about climate issues, so songs still can work.
Rich is right to think about it, but because music is art, and one of the characteristics of art that it doesn't die, it remains, it resists, so it gives the value of what people are. Because you can see the song from since independence, Chacha. So that song, whenever a Congolese can hear it, is taken into that strong sense of nationalism and determination of the fight that our fathers of independence had since that time, and no one in Congo is ready to come back to colonization. Thanks to all those people are dead now. They are no more alive, but the song remains and will go from generation to generations.
So there's a series of questions, and I hope we can have time for them all, because they're all incredible questions. I think Ritushri has a question that I think requires a little consideration. Do you support the incorporation of lacing English in the songs of contemporary period? Do you acknowledge the politics that it reflects?
Let's see.
I think, is it the question perhaps, is it replacing one colonial influence over another? Are we still going back that, perhaps I don't want to interpret that question, but
I think this question is interesting because wherever there's human beings, there is politics, right?
Yeah.
And we have linguistic language politics, we have politics everywhere. But the thing is, the song shows the linguistic landscape that English, by the government, has been put emphasis on using English in school, but the reality, the people, they use much Swahili instead of English. So the point here is there is politics on policy level on which language will have which status, but the thing is we are trying to show the reality, and through this reality, politicians and people and academicians, we can see the reality and help the government by doing research on how to incorporate these by revisiting our policies and to see how they reflect the reality of the situation. So that's what I think is.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Dr. Samuelson Beff is saying here. We need, that was where I ended my speech, saying that we should think of how to make a kind of revolution in language policies in Africa, so that things like those songs can be put into books, learned school, as to give opportunity to learners, to our students, to read those national languages and be able to understand what they learn at school in their local languages, so that what they learn in school can impact their communities.
Yeah, and
their communities and touch their hearts. Instead of learning theories. We went to a school yesterday, project school. It was very good to see that the young people, they are touching the materials, they are making videos themselves, they are writing, reading in the language they know better, you see. So, and that their heart is in there, not only staying like memorizing things from the languages they don't know.
And on top of that, you know, there's this thing that there's this dichotomy which has been persisting for many years, that we need to have one language for the country. But the thing is, most parts of the world, they are multilingual. And they are so diverse. For instance, in Africa, if you took in Tanzania, we have more than 120 languages. And in Congo, you have
more than 250.
Nigeria has approximately 400 languages. So when you look at this kind of linguistic landscape, I believe that if we can look at these languages and give them the respect which they are, it's up to us academicians and professionals to invest on these languages. For instance, some languages such as in Congo, such as Kikongo, you are working right now on how to start putting it into writings and stuff. And I've seen some of my friends back, we have some WhatsApp group where we chat with our mother tongue. That is something which we need to see them and see how these languages, instead of having this dichotomy, this binary system that black and white, you see, this is right, this is not right. We think we need to see in a diverse way, in the holistic way, in the secular way, that how things interact one another. And if we are going to work on language policies and language education, I believe if we are going to codify Kikongo we are going to codify isiZulu, we are going to codify Igbo and put all these languages in written material that all people can access this, and all these languages can be taught in schools, and the language policies can support and put the system for this language to be taught in school, so that someone can choose instead of having one dominant language, but people can be supplied with skills to learn and opportunity to learn these other languages.
So I have important questions here from Mwena, from the Republic of
That's
Congo.
right. That's right. I was going to go
Mwena
there.
Bantu
Yes.
and
Yeah.
Chimpa Sophie coming about how he found that there is a paradox. How can we value local languages in the teaching of English? English language is everybody's language, and it is not forbidden for a teacher to read a text in a local language in his English class. I always say that. I always say that. Why can't you take a piece of a proverb that is in a local language to be explored in your English class? So there is no ban, because there is a limited use of L1 in L2. So there is no paradox, because we have stories. We have stories in Lingala, we have stories in Chiluba, we have stories, and there are things that you will not translate in English. They have to be as such. You have names of rivers. You have things that can be used into an English classroom that can be valuable and well understood when they are taught in the context of those cultures and local languages.
That is amazing. Yeah.
Yes. We can.
You can choose your questions. Yeah, you can choose your questions as I'm scrolling through, and I think Mr. Moina Bantu, I think you've responded to his question. I mean, I think it's an interesting question in whether or not you're challenging how we got tools to challenge with English without the command of technology and science. So the paradox is looking at is that English is a language of technology, science, and so forth. It is a key to globalization. Now we fight it back. Would you mind telling me why? I think that's the paradox that he was referring to. Have we got tools to challenge with English without the command of technology and science? That's a very provocative question.
Yeah. I can say that one of the things is when you are going to focus on this, I mean, upholding these local languages, we don't mean like we are like going to throw away English,
no,
but we want to see how these local languages, they are being held up to the same position. So the call here is to see how we as professionals, as academicians, we can invest on how we uphold these local languages. Because if English has reached this status, this point, and the local people, they also need to be aware with what is going on at the global level and at the local level. But how can they pursue the international affairs while their local affairs are falling down? So the call here is we use English as the language which is rich and has been heavily established in technological avenues and all these information technology. There's nothing that holds back us to invest the same in making these local languages available in technology. I remember, I remember one of the major debates, especially in Tanzania, is how are we going with English alone? Are we going with Swahili alone? But I can say we don't need to pick one. We can go with both of them because they serve the purpose at international level and at local level. But at the same time, these local languages, they grew out of African boundaries. They're being studied and learned and to other parts of the world. So the thing is, we use what English can provide to enrich other languages. And also, I believe English can learn something from these local languages. So the point is, we don't want to dichotomize this. We need to we want to see how there's no fighting. We want to balance.
So English being a language of technology, being a language of science, of tourism, everything, yes, that we know. But how if that technology is not understood in a local context?
Exactly. Yes.
So it is not yet time to share my findings of my research here, because I was dealing with the perception of the English language by international and immigrant students. So, and I asked them a question. One of the questions was to know whether the fact that they learn in English give them opportunity to share about their own culture. And it was amazing to know that, to have answers that they are happy when they are here at the university to share about that culture. And when you share about your culture, you share about your language too.
Yes. Yeah.
How if you don't know what your language is, you have no cultural identity. So we are dealing with the coloniality now, is that the young people, the new generation, as a way to navigate in those stuff, learning in English with a nice regard, a nice look at their cultural identity for a good contextualization of globalization.
One of the major points that I see here, George Armstrong has reminded us, is how these our national founders, such as Patrice and
Patrice Lumumba,
Nyerere. Yeah. So these people, they were so determined in upholding these local languages. And I remember in Tanzania, Mwalimu Nyerere has adopted Swahili to be the national language. And what I see from these forefathers is that they had this political will. And I see, and I think the issue for upholding these local languages has been tied up with how our current 21st century national leaders, their attitude towards upholding these local languages. Are they willing? I remember the late President Magufuli, when he came into power, he said, I'm going to use Swahili completely. So wherever he went, outside the country, inside the country, he uses Swahili. And that made people and the other leaders, when they go outside, they started to use Swahili. And that is the way how leaders, they can create a path, they can inspire people. So this political will to put systems in place, to put programs in place, to put policies in place that will facilitate and prepare these local languages to that level is still critical and is still significant, because we see how Nyerere, I can say, succeeded for a great for high percentage that Swahili has united Tanzanians for so many decades. Right?
Yes, that's very important. And I can see what Stone is here, the version Tone, variant Tone is saying that Kiswahili is maybe cannibalized. Cannibalization of languages. So yeah, the phenomenon is that some languages like Kiswahili, Chiluba can shallow other languages. And the phenomenon exists. If you can come back, Paul, to the linguistic landscape with DRC, you will see that there are 4 linguistic zones, but the 4 are not the only languages. In the second song, Tokufopona Congo, we also have Kimongo, which is not among the four national languages. You see, it's one of the local languages. We know that fact that other local languages can be like, if you accept the word, cannibalized by the most strong languages. The phenomenon exists in linguistics, but we don't say that the Mongol people, that the Tetela people in the Kasai region, they don't disappear.
Yeah, and in connection to that, Stone mentioned something about how does this cannibalization fit into the colonization model? The thing is, during the colonial rule, the missionaries came to Africa, they studied these languages, they standardized them, they documented them. And when we got independence in most African countries, they adopt the same model, the same approach. But what we can do right now is that they go to the place, they find all these languages and all these dialects, they pick one dialect, they say, okay, this is going to be the official dialect. So this is the attempt to decolonize that perception, so that so that these languages are not getting cannibalized by this language. So this has been the thing, the legacy.
English is not cannibalizing other languages, as I told you in one of my findings, and Dr. Mata is also mentioning it, that English can help to enrich the local languages in the learning. So because if you take in your English class, take a proverb in your mother tongue and explore it into your classroom, that will be better, and it will be attractive to your students, I guess.
Yeah, and the thing is, because of that legacy, it's like, it looks like English has been pushing down all these languages. Swahili has been pushing down all these other languages. And I believe in Congo, there's a language which has more speakers. But that legacy of the colonial ways of dealing with the languages, we need to decolonize that by investing on upholding all these languages, so that students and people can learn these languages. The material will be there, the learning procedure, the learning schools will be there, so that anyone can be free to learn any language they want, so that this language may not get extinct.
Yeah, people have to learn their own language, because there are many languages. Imposing one language is very difficult for people to communicate, and it lays out other people down the scene.
We have 1 minute left, and unfortunately, we have to bring this incredible conversation to an end. And so before we go, Professor Dr. Raymond and Paul, are there anything that you want to end this conversation with that has not been asked, that you want to kind of leave a thought for us as we end this conversation today?
Yes, it's a revisitation of language policies in Africa and other places. It's the focus of our speech today, that we want the young generation to have that idea of decolonizing the language landscape.
And the thing is, we should not dichotomize these languages. We can invest on upholding these languages together without having this dichotomy that this is the powerful language, this is the lesser language. We need to balance this. So when we are going to do research, we need to have that in mind.
Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you for the encouragement. Thank you for opening our world to a new way of thinking about languages, about identity, and about self-determination. Thank you so much for your generosity and your wisdom. Good afternoon and goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you, everyone.